Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto Was Neglected by His Family and Build Harem with Older Women Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. In Konoha, a boy with blonde hair and blue eyes was looking around his Spartan-style room that was now an empty room. Not even a bed remained, it was completely empty. The blonde was Naruto Uzumaki and he was holding a scroll as he looked over the room making sure everything was gone. On the scroll it read room while he had another scroll in his other hand labeled jutsu. Naruto took all the jutsu that his parents had written down for his Jinchuriki twin, Naruto. I suppose I should head back now, Naruto said as he left the building through the window and headed towards the Uchiha clan district, the place he had been living at since he was 6 years old. The soon-to-be 13-year-old took some more important belongings from the Uzumaki compound like jutsu and seal's ideas. He did have a smirk as he looked back at the compound. Years of preparation for moving on from his family was complete, and what better way to move on than on his birthday. Naruto entered the Uchiha district and passed some clan members who waved at the honorary clan member. You see, Naruto after the age of 5 was neglected by his parents in order to train his sister. It wasn't just his parents, it was also his godfather Jiraiya and Kakashi as well. Something about a prophecy made the blonde scoff before thinking about his sister. She was arrogant, rude, self-absorbed. He could go on and bitch would pretty sum it up. He didn't care though, as he had his true family consisting of many others. He was taken in by Makoto and Fugaku, and even his godmother Tsunade, who visited just when they started neglecting, chose to stay with him rather than his spoilt sister. Over the years he met others who helped him and became members of his new family, and the respect they had for the Yondaime and his wife greatly dropped. The family of the Ichiraku ramen place also helped the blonde. Many others over the years joined his new family and they taught him many things. Taijutsu, ninjutsu, Fuinjutsu, Genjutsu, Kenjutsu, Iryo ninjutsu, etc. Tonight they would be holding a party for Naruto's birthday. Naruto entered the guest room and placed his scrolls down. He glanced at the jutsu scroll before looking towards the door. He could go to the Uchiha library for jutsu, but he decided to stay with the scroll in front of him. As an Uzumaki he was going to learn his clan's sealing techniques. The other techniques he would learn just because and make changes to them. Those techniques were powerful after all. However, despite being powerful, there was a lot of room to make improvements. One of the original techniques his father made wasn't even finished, and the other technique he also created required a catalyst. Sure, it would be hard to do it without one, but it should be possible if more time was spent working on it. He stopped and glanced over towards the clock. I should get ready soon, he thought. He was putting his plans into action. Tonight was the night he was going to officially move on from his family. The neglected him, hit him whenever his sister said something that involved him hurting her, breaking things, when he won the spars against his sister, when he was found training. Minato and Kushina weren't ready to be parents, and when Tsunade found out they hit him, she wasn't happy about it. When the other members of his new family heard, they also weren't happy and got back at the family in their own way. They also hated Naruto's personality and refused to train her, much to the Jinchuriki's anger. The only good thing Minato did as a parent was execute Danzo for revealing his plans to turn the two into weapons and disbanding Root completely. Naruto waited until the party started, so until then he was going to practice, and then there was the other party that truly mattered. The party kicked off as clan heads and heirs joined along with civilians. Naruto was unseen by everyone as their attention was on Naruto. No one spared him a second glance, not a single one. How did he feel about that? Good. He didn't truly care for the party, this was all for the plan. Naruto had to wait through some boring parts like meeting the guests, a few presents, cake, as it was all the same with Naruto's parties. At least Naruto's parties they try to make something new a couple of times. Suddenly Minato got everyone's attention that caused Naruto to smirk. I would like to announce that Naruto is officially the heir to the Uzumaki clan, Minato said to the party guests as they were left shocked at the announcement. Silence rang through the room as clapping could be heard. The room turned to see the forgotten son of Minato and Kushina clapping as he walked down towards his sister. The party guests took in his appearance. He was wearing black pants, a white versus neck with 3/4 sleeves, and finally he wore a necklace with a black cord with a small golden kunai with his name engraved in red. Minato and Kushina were looking at Naruto in shock as Naruto scowled at her brother. "What are you doing here?" Naruto venomously spat out, clearly displeased at her brother being here. "You're ruining the party. Yeah, get lost, loser," Ino said as she also scowled at Naruto before she fell to the ground with tears in her eyes holding her cheek. She looked up to see Naruto looking down at her with cold eyes. "Silence, trash," he coldly said to her with his hand raised. When Ino stood in his way he slapped her down. He then had a box and held it for Naruto to grab. "I got you a gift," he said as his sister looked down at the box in question. "It was worth a lot of ryo," he said. "Almost as much as Tsunade-chan's necklace." This got her attention and grabbed the box without a thank you or anything similar. Naruto just turned away and walked as Inoichi frowned at him and went to grab the boy who slapped his daughter. He was disappointed in Ino for the way she acted, but after she got slapped he went into overprotective father mode. However, Inoichi couldn't move. He looked down to see force and bond in his arms and legs. They were coated in a paralytic poison, making it so he couldn't move. Inoichi tried to speak but he couldn't find his words. Meanwhile, Shikaku was looking at Naruto walk away before his eyes looked down at his body. He managed to strike us all with Senbon coated in paralytic poison without any of us noticing. He looked up towards the children. All of us except the children and Minato and Kushina have been hit with Senbon. He also managed to place chakra suppression seals, silencing seals and restriction seals on us except for the same ones who got hit by the Senbon. Minato and Kushina do have the chakra suppression seals on them though. He even used Ino when he slapped for all of us into shock, Shikaku thought. He sure is a prodigy to go unnoticed by all of us and place seals and poison-covered Senbon on us. Naruto however opened the box to see a seal. "What the hell is this?" she asked with frustration. "It's a seal," Minato said looking down at it. "Try pushing chakra into it. It's probably a storage seal to protect your gift," Kushina said nodding along with Minato. Naruto pushed chakra into the seal and almost instantly long sharp rods came out of the seal, piercing right through Naruto's body and head, killing her. This caused everyone to freak out but they couldn't move and Minato and Kushina were in shock at how their daughter was killed. Suddenly seals appeared all around the room and started to glow a bright red. Minato and other tried to use their chakra but they found out they couldn't at all. Shikaku however was thinking after witnessing the murder. So that was his plan, he thought. It must have taken him years to set all of this up unless he is just like Itachi, then again he is an Uzumaki. Shikaku had to admit that Naruto was a genius with the seals. Chakra suppression seals caused whoever it was attached to greatly suppress their chakra, making it so they couldn't activate their jutsus. The silencing seals were mainly used to make a room completely silent so those outside couldn't hear them speak, but those in the T&I department, mainly Anko and Ibuki, used it to silence whoever they were interrogating, making it so they couldn't speak. They jokingly called it the shut-up seal. The restriction seal was the seal he was largely impressed by. The restriction seal was derived from the gravity seals, but instead of weighing down the gravity to make it harder for someone to move, the restriction seal made it so their bodies couldn't move at all as it restricted their movement. The use of both restriction seal and paralytic poison caused movement to be impossible. As a shinobi you could improve your resistance to poison by using non-lethal poisons. The seals were used as a backup to the poison, as while they couldn't move due to against the seal, or at least have a very hard time, you could have a resistance to the non-lethal poison. "It looks like none of us are leaving alive," Shikaku thought as the whole room started to glow a bright white light. "Yoshino Harem, neither me nor Shikamaru are coming home tonight," A single tear went down his face as the whole compound exploded while other seals caused rods to come out of them, piercing each one of the occupants, killing them. This happened all at once. Exploding seals exploded the whole compound, destroying it completely. Storage seals containing the rods caused piercing when unsealed, and finally flash seals causing blind all the occupants. Where once was a compound filled with people was now reduced to a burnt, smoking plot of land with no survivors. Meanwhile, in the Uchiha clan was Makoto Uchiha, Itachi Uchiha, Shisui Uchiha, Sasuke Uchiha, Tsunade and her apprentice Shizune, Ayame and her father Tsuki, Yugao, Hayate, Ibuki, Anko and Kurenai, along with Asuma Sarutobi and finally Naruto himself. They were throwing a party for Naruto in the Uchiha district. The party was going well as people talked to each other. Naruto was talking to Sasuke, his best friend and rival. However, there weren't many other Uchihas left in the clan as a coup was starting to form, but thanks to Itachi and Shisui the coup never happened, at the cost some adults, mainly males, that wanted the coup to happen. The clan lost some members, but they still had a decent amount of members alive. When Sasuke went to get some more food, Naruto looked around, taking a look at the people he cared about with a smile on his face. He looked over to his godmother and was quite shocked that she wasn't drinking sake at the party despite sake being at the party. It was probably for the trip home. Before he looked away, his eyes did glance at her impressive bust. Naruto looked back to his plate and eating some of the food. Naruto always liked women older than him, and there were a few his age he liked. Actually, all of the women in the room he had attraction to. You could blame Jiraiya and the Ika Ika series, or you could blame Minato and Kushina's neglect causing Naruto to become attached to others who showed him more parental love. Either way, Naruto didn't care what people would think if they found his preferred taste in women. His eyes went over the other females of the room while passing over the males while waiting for Sasuke to return. He wondered what would happen if Sasuke ever found out that he has a crush or attraction to Makoto. Makoto was now a widow due to Fugaku's death, and Naruto was one of the people to comfort her. Makoto said she wasn't going to go back into the dating game anytime soon. Deep down, Naruto smiled. He was torn when it came to Makoto. She was a mother figure to him more than his real mother. He would admit that she was attractive and was a little jealous of Fugaku, but he saw Fugaku as a father. He may be a little strict, but he did show that he cares, and that was what torn him. One hand, he didn't want to be with Makoto, or at least try to be with her in respect for his father figure, and on the other wanted to be with Makoto. And the thing was, it wasn't just only Makoto. There was a room full of them, remember? Naruto sighed. 4 people he wanted to turn up couldn't due to a mission, and they were Rock Lee, Tenten, Neji Hyuga and Might Guy. Team 9 was older than them by a year, and they would be graduating later during the year. Naruto did feel sorry for Guy though, because of what would happen soon. After his plan, Guy wouldn't be the same as before and he would lose his youth. Will Naruto feel bad for the innocents that would perish alongside his father, mother and bitch of a sister? No, not really. He usually didn't care for anyone unless they were a part of his family, a group of people he truly cared for. Of course he would meet others he would come to care for and they would join his family, but until then the only people he cared for was in this room, and 4 outside somewhere. Guilt might reach his heart one day, but for now they have chosen their sides. They chose the losing side, Naruto, and it costed them tonight. Sasuke came back to the table with more food and talked with his mother and brother before coming back after seeing Naruto look out the window towards his family's home. To Sasuke it looked like I wonder what's happening, or, what if, look, but if any experienced shinobi were to see him looking towards the compound, it was a clear sign of waiting for something to happen. I'm back, Sasuke said as he sat down opposite of Naruto. Naruto just smiled at Sasuke. I noticed. Naruto looked down at his own plate. Maybe I should have went with you. Sasuke glanced at his friend's plate. Depends if you're still hungry or not. Naruto smiled as he stood up. I'll be back in a flash. He also walked over to get more food. When he picked up some more food he saw Anko dropped her empty cup and went to pick it up. Since she usually wore her overcoat and fitted mesh bodysuit that stretches from her neck down to her thighs, it showed off her body. But tonight nearly everyone's outfit was different from their usual everyday outfits, more the females than the males. Anko was still tomboyish even if her usual outfit doesn't seem like it. She was wearing a dark purple tank top with a jacket over top and a pair of tight pants going down to her ankles. Due to her jacket being open and bending over to pick up the empty cup, it gave Naruto a good view of her cleavage. Mind you, Naruto was not a pervert. He might have an appreciation for the female body, but that didn't classify him as a pervert. The stuff Jiraiya did was classified as perversion, and Naruto didn't do what his godfather did. He might take a few looks, but other males took looks at other females as well. He might have an attraction to some women, but he wouldn't go after them if they were already in a relationship. Unlike Jiraiya, when Tsunade dated Dan Kato before his death, Jiraiya still tried going for Tsunade. Naruto walked back, but he brought something else along with the food. Placing the food down, Sasuke raised an eyebrow as he looked at the bottle Naruto brought over. "What's that?" Sasuke asked, pointing towards the bottle Naruto placed on the table. "Sake," Naruto answered as he placed 2 sakazuki on the table. "Why do you have sake?" Sasuke whispered. Naruto looked at him with a raised brow as he poured the 2 cups. "No need to whisper," he said as he placed the small sake bottle down. "When you exchange sake cups, you become brothers." Sasuke's eyes widened. So that's what the sakazuki cups are for, Sasuke thought. When we become shinobi, we may not be on the same team, but our bonds will keep us together as brothers. No matter where we are or what we do, our bond will not be broken. Naruto picked up his cup, as did Sasuke. "Starting with this, today we're brothers." Naruto and Sasuke drank the sake cups and both smiled. "We will be brothers unless I get together with Makoto-chan," Naruto thought as he closed one eye. "I do wonder if you'll call me too, San." Naruto shook those thoughts before he looked at the other guests. He did wish the other guests stayed longer. Sume Inuzuka and her daughter Hana, they were also 2 that witnessed the neglect and helped him. He was also good friends with Kiba, but they both left as Kiba had caught a rather nasty virus. Hana stayed a lot longer, but she had to get back to the Ninken. Naruto stopped as he turned to the compound just as it exploded. Everyone in the Uchiha compound turned to the explosion. "That explosion," Makoto said as they stood up. "It came from the Uzumaki compound," Itachi said as they all stood up, including Naruto. "Naruto, Sasuke, you both stay here," Asuma said as both looked at each other. The adults left as Naruto, Sasuke, Ayame and Tsuki remained. Ayame and Tsuki remained as they were civilians. "I hope they are okay," Ayame said as her father placed his hand on her shoulder. While she disliked Minato and Kushina for their neglect and Naruto for her attitude and behavior of being arrogant, and especially for how she acts towards her brother, but that didn't mean she didn't want anything too bad to happen to them. Naruto just looked out the window before he jumped out. "I can't take it," he said. "I need to know." He then ran off, leaving the 3 by themselves. "I need to make sure they're dead," he thought as he ran towards the compound as his smirk appeared on his face. "Never mind, my suspicions are confirmed, but this will further help my case." Naruto reached the compound as he stared at it emotionlessly. Due to death of many clan heirs and clan heads along with the Jinchuriki and Hokage, the Leaf Village would be severely weakened. For Hokage, however, Tsunade would most likely be appointed as Hokage, as she was the only Sannin in Konoha now. Naruto inwardly scoffed at how easy it was for powerful figures such as the Yondaime, Kakashi and Jiraiya had easily died. He then remembered an important saying, and that was, "Even a genin can kill a cage." This saying was told in the academy, but many looked over it and it was surprisingly true. Skill and talent didn't matter. If you can catch your opponent unaware, you can easily kill them. For example, if he and Minato had a true father-son bond, Minato would have his guard lowered around him, and that night when they were sleeping he took out a kunai. He could easily slice Minato's neck. If he were to wake up he could just play dumb and say that he couldn't sleep and wanted a genjutsu put on him or something similar. Yugao looked over to Naruto, who stared at the compound with dead eyes. Yugao wrapped his arms around him. They might have neglected me, but why did they have to die? Naruto asked. I don't know, Yugao said as she let go of the blonde. I'm going to go back. Naruto finally got out as he dragged himself back to the compound with widened eyes, and Yugao could see tears gathering in his eyes. Even though he said he wanted nothing to do with them anymore, he still cared, Yugao thought as she watched Naruto walked away. They're dead all right, a Chunin said. Do you know the cause of death? Another Chunin asked. Negative, the Chunin replied. Tsunade looked at the compound now gone, leaving no survivors. Everyone who attended died. Was this an assassination attempt? She wondered aloud. This information, if leaked, could cause Iwa to invade. Tsunade then looked down at the ground. Even the pervert perished. She turned her head to see Naruto walking away, or more likely dragging himself. At least Naruto is safe. Tsunade turned to the Chunin. Get me a list of everyone who attended the party. We are holding a funeral tomorrow. Itachi was looking down at the burned area. Such an attack caused many deaths without leaving any bodies. Shisui nodded. I wonder how Naruto is going to take this. When Shisui said this, Itachi's eyes widened. Itachi knew that Naruto still wanted his real parents to acknowledge him. Meanwhile, Naruto was nearing the Uchiha district with a smirk on his face. He placed his hands together and called out a jutsu. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Technique. Suddenly a clone of Naruto appeared and looked at him and nodded as the clone went back towards the destroyed compound. Naruto made the smirk on his face disappear as he walked into the building. He walked over and sat down next to Sasuke. Is everything alright? Sasuke asked as Naruto looked at him. No one at the compound survived, Naruto said. Everyone there died. Sasuke's eyes widened at the information. Wait, everyone? He asked as the blonde only nodded. The duo sat in silence. Sasuke was in shock at how everyone was killed, while Naruto just glanced lazily out the window towards the compound. He couldn't believe at how easily they were killed. Jonin-leveled shinobi and Kage-level shinobi killed just like that. Blood was on his hands now, innocent blood, yet he felt nothing. You could call him a monster for what he did, but he didn't care. He had chosen to move on from his family, and in order to move on he had to get rid of the past. Meanwhile, with Naruto's clone was at the destroyed compound as everyone gathered together discussing whether it was an assassination or a common household seal failure, or even the Kyuubi. Thinking about the Kyuubi, Naruto had to wonder that now with the death of the Jinchuriki, if the Kyuubi would reform and come back to Konoha. Naruto didn't believe it, as the Kyuubi wouldn't risk going back to Konoha and being sealed again. The Kyuubi would find somewhere to stay and never appear before humans again. The fox would most likely find a way to close itself from the human world than risk being resealed. The clone watched as the older shinobi stayed for a while, and Shizune, Itachi and Anko went back to the Uchiha district just in case the attackers would go after him. He would never be suspected as a prime suspect, as many people at the party could testify he was there. The clone decided to wait a while for the group of shinobi to disperse before walking over to the burnt plot of land and kneeling down. He placed his hands together as a seal glowed on the ground, causing the clone to pick the paper tag up. The clone headed over to the forest of death and placed the seal on the ground. It took him years to get all the seals in place after he first started learning about Fuinjutsu, but luckily being in Uzumaki somehow made it easier for him to work with seals. The tag showed a small projection in front of him. He witnessed everyone being stabbed and incinerated. Not even the fourth or Jiraiya could get away. He did have to thank Ino for a distraction though. He watched as the projection showed the deaths and incinerations. Destroying the seal, he dispelled. His job was done. He could finally move on. The seal that was used was a recording seal that would record the events in a room or radius upon activation and then afterwards play it back for the user or someone else to watch. It was a useful seal, but sadly there weren't in production due to how hard it was to even make it. It also had a one-time use for recording, but the playback was endless. As the seal was now destroyed, all evidence was gone. Naruto stayed in the safety of the Uchiha clan for the night, but he had to go into hiding as they assumed he might be next. Days passed before Naruto was allowed to go back to the academy. He did attend the funeral, however, before he went into hiding. There were multiple graves for each person. Minato Namikaze, Kushina Uzumaki, Naruko Uzumaki, Shikaku Nara, Shikamaru Nara, Inoichi Yamanaka, Ino Yamanaka, Hinata Hyuga, Hiyashi Hyuga, Choji Akamichi, Choza Akamichi, Kakashi Hatake, Jiraiya, Sakura Haruno and Kazashi Haruno. These were the ones who perished. The only surviving clan heirs were Naruto, Sasuke, Kiba and Shino. There were other clans with heirs that survived, but the four were the ones that chose not to go to the party. Naruto and Shino's friendship was a weird one. Naruto and Shino would hang out, but Shino didn't go to parties. During the funeral, Naruto did comfort the people there. Mebuki Haruno, the mother of Sakura, Yoshino Nara, the mother of Shikamaru, Hikari Hyuga, the mother of Hinata and Hanabi, and lastly Amiko Yamanaka, the mother of Ino. These four were comforted by Naruto. Yoshino cried on his shoulder. Mebuki wept as Naruto held her close. Hikari held Hanabi close as Naruto held her, and Amiko, despite being a calm and collected individual, broke down in his arms. Mebuki was sick the day of the party. Yoshino and Amiko decided not to come and chose to spend the night together. Hikari chose to stay at home with Hanabi. After the funeral, Tsunade, as his godmother, took him into the Senju compound where he lived with her and Shizune. He asked what would happen to Hikari and Hanabi as he knew of the clan's cursed seal, but sadly Tsunade didn't know, so he then proceeded to ask Hikari and Hanabi if they would have liked to stay at the Senju compound in case they decided to place the seal on them. Happy to say they agreed, but they wanted to wait until the cursed seal was certain. Hanabi attached herself to the blonde after a few days and started to kill him, Nisan. He also went other to the Akamichi clan and comforted Cho Akamichi, the mother of Choji. Cho after the funeral headed straight home and never left her room. Luckily Naruto managed to get her out of it. He wasn't going to take advantage of their weakened state or walk into their life and instantly becoming their lover. He wasn't like Jiraiya, who actually have the nerve and asked Tsunade out on a date on the very same day of Dan's funeral. He was a monster with blood-soaked hands. He was a murderer, a psychopath, a cold-blood killer, a kinslayer. He committed great crimes, the murder of his sister, father and mother. The murder of children around his age, the murder of many adults, many clan heirs and heads killed so easily. He was a true monster, maybe on par with Orochimaru himself. Did Naruto feel regret? Did he feel guilty over the deaths? No, he did not. He held no guilt, no remorse. He was a cold-hearted monster. As he said before they chose their side, he never had second thoughts about it. He wondered if the guilt would come rushing in, but it never came. He held no care for the people who perished alongside his family. As he said before, he only held compassion for those within his little group, his true family. In the future more would join his family, but until then he was content with his family as it was. Now that Naruto was able to go back to the academy, he was currently sitting in a class as their teacher Suzume was teaching the class. Suzume mainly taught females, but she did teach a class full of males as well. Naruto glanced out the window to see the fifth Hokage's head being crafted into the monument. Tsunade was vastly stronger than Minato. Tsunade had super strength, medical skills and of course her summons. Minato, whilst being a Kage, was, in Naruto's opinion, one of the weakest Kage. Minato had the Hiraishin, Flying Thunder God, and the Rasengan, Spiraling Sphere, both being taken from someone else. The time-space ninjutsu taken from the second Hokage Tobirama Senju, and the Rasengan from the Bijudama, Tailed Beast Ball. The same could be for seals. Whilst learning time-space fuinjutsu, his sealing techniques were more akin to that of the Uzumaki style of sealing. Hell, the Uzumaki clan was the ones responsible for creating the Shiki Fujin, dead demon-consuming seal. Naruto was happy that Tsunade was Hokage, and he was happy that she was his official guardian. While he saw Makoto as a mother, he also saw Tsunade as a mother as well, and both did a better job than Kushina. Naruto smiled as he remembered what his new family taught him. Tsunade taught him about Iryo ninjutsu and said that one day he could sign the slug summoning contract. Makoto showed him motherly love. Itachi helped him with genjutsu while Shisui helped with some kenjutsu and ninjutsu. Yugao and Hayate spent more time with kenjutsu. Kurenai helped with genjutsu while Asuma taught him some wind-related ninjutsu. Guy helped with his taijutsu. Shizune helped him with poisons. Anko and Ibuki taught him interrogation methods. Fugaku taught him what fathers usually taught their sons. Tsuki and Ayame gave him an occasionally bowl of ramen while teaching him how to cook. Tsume and Hana spent some time teaching him tracking an opponent, and finally he trained with Sasuke, Kiba, Shino, Tenten, Neji and Rock Lee regularly. Now Naruto wasn't the strongest, far from it actually, and everyone couldn't help train the blonde all the time. The Uchihas trained Sasuke more, which was understandable. Tsunade and Shizune worked at the hospital. Tsuki and Ayame were civilians and couldn't help him with his ninja training. Tsume was teaching Kiba. Hana was working at the clan's veterinary clinic. Yugao and Hayate spent some time together and had their jobs as shinobi of the village, same as for Kurenai and Asuma. Guy focused more on Lee and his own genin team. Team 9 had to put up with Guy's ridiculous training methods, which Lee was the only one who embraced it with open arms, as well as missions. Shino was more of a loner despite Naruto's attempts to bring the Aburame into his family, and Shino's father seemed happy for his son to make a friend. Sasuke and Kiba were being trained by their parents. Anko and Ibuki had their jobs at the T&I department. The shinobi were all on edge and working overtime due to the sudden death of the Kage and clan heads and heirs. The clans had to choose from people from their clan that were suitable for being the clan head. Shikaku actually had a will that chose his successor until his son was fit, or if he and his son had died. They chose Shikaku's younger brother, who showed no interest for being clan head, similar to what Shikaku did when he was appointed clan head. Torafu Akamichi came out of retirement and became the clan head. Inoichi's father did the same. The Hyugas were still deciding whether Hanabi become clan head once old enough or choosing someone else. Naruto did wonder what would happen to the wives of the clan heads. He was happy that they were able to stay within the compounds. Amiko was able to run the flower shop. Cho was able to run the clan's barbecue restaurant. He didn't know if Mebuki and Yoshino worked, but he still gave them all an option to live at the compound. Speaking about compounds, Naruto remembered the other Uzumaki compound. It was less a compound and more of a mask storage temple. Unlike the compound within Konoha, the mask temple was on the outskirts of Konoha, and he would have to talk with Tsunade about it later. Maybe he could live there and bring it into Konoha, using seals to take the whole compound and place it in the spot the first compound was. Naruto brought his attention back to the class as Suzume taught the class. He had to admit Suzume was a pretty good teacher, unlike some of the other teachers who taught the class stuff that didn't help with becoming a shinobi. When Suzume taught a subject like the founders of Konoha, she pointed out both the good points and the bad of each one, or when she taught the class about life and death situations. These of course wasn't liked as much by the civilian parents, but she held her more serious shinobi classes after school was over, which wasn't very long. Naruto, Sasuke and Shino stayed as the others left, not wanting to go back to school after it had ended. Because the three stayed for the more serious sides of the shinobi lifestyle, they became her three favorite students. Thinking about graduating, their sensei would either be Kurenai Yuhi or Asuma Sarutobi, and since due to the death of the clan heirs, teams might become four-man teams. Naruto glanced to his right to see Sasuke looking a little bored dealing with civilian-styled teachings at the moment. Looking around, he saw some genin hopefuls from civilian families, and most were fangirls over Sasuke or him. Naruto felt a little annoyed when people felt sorry for him when he felt fine. When they asked why he was smiling even after the horrible tragedy of Konoha, he replied that his family didn't want him to sulk in the past and continuing walking into the future. The truth was his real family didn't die, that was that. He gave a bullshit excuse and he saw his group as his family. My real family is still alive. Those who died that night weren't my real family, he thought as he rested his head on his hand. He really wanted to say those words to whoever asked. After the boring class ended, Suzume taught the real helpful class that would actually help them as shinobi. The civilians that sent their children to learn were real idiots if they didn't want their children to learn about the real world. Their children can die, but they didn't like that school system, so that wanted a change, therefore creating a pathetic excuse of a school. However, Suzume made up for it with her real classes held after school hours, and it was really helpful. Since it was always Naruto, Sasuke and Shino, their teacher, gave some little hints on the genin test for them. Naruto was glad that Suzume taught them these things. Naruto had plans after class, and that involved his jutsus in a few ways to get new jutsu. While he was working on making his own jutsu, he did learn jutsu from the Uzumaki clan and the few jutsu Minato and Kushina wrote down for Naruto. Naruto had to scoff at how they only wrote them down for Naruto, as they believed her to be the child of prophecy. An arrogant, self-centered, spoilt girl who threw a tantrum, who did get what they wanted or get their way. The list could go on if Naruto really wanted to. Would you want someone like that to become the savior, or destroyer, of this world? Naruto did the world a favor by getting rid of the potential destroyer. Someone with that type of attitude didn't deserve to be a savior, a hero. Hell, she didn't even qualify being the world's destroyer. She was just a spoilt child pretending to be the one who controlled the fate of the world, and Minato, Kushina and Jiraiya believed that. A girl like her can never be the child of prophecy. Did Naruto believe he was the child of prophecy? No, he did not. He didn't want to destroy the world, but he also wasn't going to save it either. He didn't want to be the child of prophecy. That meant his strength wouldn't be real, and all his battles he would have won't be from his skill or strength, but because it was fate or destiny. He didn't want that. Naruto was walking along the road towards the Akamichi clan. Once he got there, he knocked on the door, which was answered by Cho Akamichi. "Oh, Naruto-kun," she said, looking at the blonde with a smile. Ever since the funeral, Naruto had been visiting those who lost loved ones, helping them recover. Cho liked the blonde's company, especially since he was a friend of her son. If only she knew. "May I come in?" Naruto asked as she nodded. Naruto entered the building as Cho closed the door behind her. "Do you want some tea?" Cho asked as Naruto nodded. Naruto watched as Cho left the room to get the tea. During this time, Naruto created a shadow clone. "You know what to do," Naruto told the clone, who nodded and walked out of the room as well. Naruto didn't have to wait long for Cho and the tea. "How are you feeling?" he asked as he drank the tea. He wasn't a tea person, but he did enjoy it. "A little better," she said, and it showed. No longer did she stay locked away in her room for hours on end, but now she was slowly recovering. Many people gave the ones who lost their loved ones so room when in fact they wanted someone to be there for them. A shoulder to cry on, someone to tell them everything would be okay. This is why they, Cho and the other widows, enjoyed Naruto's company. Besides from one or two people checking on them, Naruto went out of his way to make sure they were fine every day. They were still depressed over the deaths, but Naruto was helping them recover slowly. Naruto and Cho talked for a while before Naruto looked at the clock. "Sorry, Akamichi-san, but," Naruto started to speak before getting cut off by Cho. "Please call me Cho," she said with a smile. "Okay, Cho-chan," Naruto said. "It's getting late. I better get back before Tsunade worries. If you want, you can stay at the Senju compound or the Uzumaki compound once that gets rebuilt," Naruto told Cho as she nodded. "I'll keep it in mind, Naruto-kun," Cho said. After saying goodbye and saying that he would visit again, Naruto walked down the path towards the next compound, the Nara clan. Suddenly Naruto's clone dropped down and was holding a scroll. Naruto picked the scroll up and saw it was labeled Akamichi. Good work, Naruto told his clone. Now we are nearing the next one, he said, pocketing the scroll away as the clone nodded. Naruto did the same thing he did at the Akamichi compound and the door was opened by Yoshino. Afternoon Nara-san, he said. Yoshino smiled at the blonde. I thought I told you to call me Yoshino Naruto-kun, she said as he let the blonde in. How was your day? He asked. It was fine, she said as Naruto noticed the tiredness in her eyes. You should get some sleep, Yoshino-chan. The widow sighed. I know, but I understand, Naruto said. We are sharing the same pain. Yoshino smiled a little as the blonde asked more about her day and if she was fine. When Naruto was about to leave, he told her the same thing he did with Cho about moving out, and she seemed to think about it more than Cho. Naruto left saying goodbye and went to the Yamanaka clan and talked with Amiko. Amiko seemed calm and collected, but Naruto knew this was just a front. On the inside, Amiko was weeping, putting on a facade to hide her real feelings. He was invited in and they talked, and Naruto told her about staying at the compounds, one already there and the other being built or moved. Next he went to the Haruno residence located in the civilian district away from the clan districts. Naruto was worried about Mebuki the most. He hated Sakura, but Mebuki was nice to him whenever they met. Naruto found out that Mebuki didn't work and it caused him to worry. Mebuki let him in and just like the other three talked and gave the offer. Hey, are you sure, Naruto-kun? Mebuki asked as Naruto nodded. I'm sure, Mebuki-chan, Naruto said. I'm worried about you. Naruto saw a tiny blush on her face as she heard those words. When Mebuki married Kazashi and had Sakura, Kazashi turned out to be an idiot, a real idiot. Before they got married he showed Mebuki love, but when they got married it started to go down from there. Having Sakura made the relationship go back, but it didn't last long. Mebuki knew she married an idiot that was goofy but was too dense to show his wife some affection every now and then. Over the years Kazashi thought the marriage was fine, but Mebuki began to love Kazashi less and less. Sure, she really cared for him when he died, but if he didn't, she was actually thinking of getting divorced. It's up to you, Mebuki-chan, the blonde said. I want to, she said. But I can't right now. How are you going to afford living here? He asked. I'm going to get a job, she said. And if you can't, then I'll take you up on your offer, she said. And Naruto-kun, what do you mean by the Uzumaki compound? It's destroyed. You see, Mebuki-chan, there is an Uzumaki mask storage temple on the outskirts of Konoha, he told her. I'm planning to bring it into Konoha with the use of seals. What about the Senju compound? The only people that live in it are Tsunade-sama, Shizune and you. Mebuki listed off the 3 people who lived there. The compound is one of the largest in Konoha, but would Tsunade really let me live there? Naruto didn't really think about that. If I play my cards right, then it should be fine, he thought. I'll talk to her about it. Besides, it's very lonely there and needs more people in it. I suppose so, Mebuki said as Naruto would be at the compound alone due to Tsunade working both as Hokage and running the hospital, and Shizune being her assistant, especially to stop her from drinking sake. According to Naruto, Tsunade drank sake when on Hokage shift. She didn't do it all the time, but she did drink it occasionally. Naruto stood up. I'll see you tomorrow, Mebuki-chan, Naruto said as he left, and Mebuki smiled as the blonde left. The blonde with no whiskers walked back towards the Senju compound as his clone landed next to him and gave him 2 more scrolls before dispelling. One was labeled Nara and the other was labeled Yamanaka. These 3 scrolls had jutsu from the Akamichi, Nara and Yamanaka clans. There were 4 ways to get these jutsu. First was to copy with the Sharingan, the second was to marry into the clan, the third was to be born into the clan, and the last one was to steal the jutsu from the clan. You may be thinking that Naruto used Amiko, Cho and Yoshino to get into the clan and steal said jutsu, but that wasn't the case at all. If by chance he married into the clan, he would be able to learn their jutsus. Out of the 3, only Amiko wasn't a shinobi. Yoshino was a shinobi that married Shikaku, and Cho was a member of the Akamichi clan that married Choza. Naruto truly cared for the women. The idea to take the jutsu from the clans only came recently when he was reading the Uzumaki clan's jutsu and abilities. Naruto wasn't going to learn any of the jutsu from them now, but maybe after he somehow ends up marrying on the three. Sure, he was going to take a look and see how they work, but he wasn't going to use them. He was going to ask Amiko, Yoshino and Cho if he could use them, and since they haven't been in active shinobi in years, he will give them these for them to learn and maybe help Amiko learn the Yamanaka clan jutsu despite her being a civilian. Sure, he stole the jutsu. Sure, he did it when he was with the people he came to care for, but he was doing this for good reasons and yet also selfish ones. Naruto returned home to the Senju compound and opened his drawer and placed chakra into a small seal to make 3 scrolls appear with the labels Hyuga, Uchiha and Inuzuka. He sealed them away along with the 3 other scrolls. He obtained the Hyuga and Inuzuka jutsu when visiting the clans, and he had access to the Uchiha library, but he couldn't get access to all the jutsu, but thanks to his clones he did. He had full access to the Senju jutsu library, even the few with Mokuten jutsu. He wasn't going to go after the other clans' jutsus as he had enough. He was going to hold on to these in case of another potential massacre or getting stolen and destroyed. Naruto being the last Uzumaki, at least in Konoha, he knew that clan jutsus were important to the clans. He was just going to hold them safely and maybe look over them and see how they worked. If he used a clan jutsu without permission from the clan, marrying into the clan or being born into the clan, it would cause a lot of problems in the long run. In the same drawer on the opposite side was another seal. It contained his clan's jutsu he got when Kushina brought them over from Uzushiogakure. Apparently Uzushiogakure foresaw their fate as they knew how powerful their seals were and gave Kushina the whole clan's jutsu library. Sure, there were other Uzumakis out there, but Kushina was moving to Konoha, and that gave them the perfect opportunity to move their jutsu and ensure its safety. Many people who searched Uzushiogakure, who could actually make it to the island, were very disappointed that nothing of worth was left. Naruto also copied the Senju library and put in the same seal as the Uzumaki scroll. Some and many techniques were considered useless to him, like the jutsus requiring the Byakugan and the Sharingan. Naruto read through his clan's techniques, and a majority of it was mainly seals like the dead demon consuming seal and many other seals. There was also techniques such as the Kongo Fusa, adamantine sealing chains, and the ability to bite and consume a Uzumaki's chakra to heal injuries of others and themselves. He didn't want people to bite into his skin and leave marks that never disappear. That would suck, having a permanent reminder of someone biting you. Naruto sat on his bed looking at the clock in his room. Tsunade and Shizune would be arriving late tonight. He was looking forward for the next few days. Graduation day was coming up and soon he would become a shinobi. He went to make dinner and leave Tsunade and Shizune's meals for them when they got home. He had moved on without any regrets and he felt good. Naruto had a smirk on his face, and that wasn't the only thing. He was currently wearing a forehead protector with the symbol of Konoha on it. Naruto had passed the Genin exams. At least the first part of it. Some of Suzume's hints for the exam for being a good student by attending all the after-school classes helped with figuring out the true exam. He was currently on his way to Mebuki's place before going to the Uchiha clan to celebrate. Knocking on the door, Mebuki answered. "Naruto-kun, what are you doing here?" she asked. "I passed my exams," Naruto said as the headband shined in the light. Mebuki, noticing the headband, smiled at Naruto. "I'm glad you passed." "Thanks, Mebuki-chan," Naruto said as she led him inside. "Do you want something to drink?" Mebuki asked. "I'm good," Naruto said as he smiled at her. Naruto noticed a pink tint on her face. Naruto knew that Mebuki's starting to have a crush on him, and now that he was a ninja, at least until he passes the second test, he was considered and seen as an adult. Old enough to kill, old enough to drink, smoke and... This was a simple saying that pretty much summed it up. If he was old enough to kill his enemies, Then he is old enough to enjoy the pleasures of life before or in case he dies. Mebuki wasn't the first person who blushed. He had visited Tsuki and Ayame, who gave him one free bowl of ramen, and he caused Ayame to blush. When he got his headband, he caused Suzume to blush. Naruto was the one who went to the after lessons the most. Sasuke and Shino had some clan events and the like, which resulted with only him being present for the after-class lessons. Out of the 3 students, Naruto was the one who probably knew Suzume the most. Suzume opened up to her student and told him about herself. Naruto also knew that the other widows were starting to see him more than a friend that also lost someone they care about. However, at this stage it was just a small crush depending on the person. Naruto knew that he might have a growing harem on his hands. He wasn't going to go out of his way to get a harem, but he also isn't going to go out of his way to prevent one either. There were a few ways to legally have a harem in a ninja village. One way is to have a bloodline and be the last of your clan. Naruto was indeed the last of his clan, at least inside Konoha, but he didn't exactly have a bloodline. There were other ways to get a harem, but most of them required string pulling. While Naruto didn't have a Kekkei Genkei bloodline limit, but he had something close to one. During the days he was reading the Uzumaki scroll and was currently learning the techniques first as they were his clan. The adamantine sealing chains used a special chakra. Naruto didn't know what chakra this was, but he managed to make a small chain come out of his palm. It wasn't anything great, but he did it. He had the special chakra of the Uzumaki clan. Naruto actually didn't know if it counted as a bloodline, but he was fairly sure it wasn't, but they don't need to know that. The scroll only had techniques and seals in it anyway. It had no written information of the chains being a bloodline or not. Naruto had access to the Senju library and all its contents, even the Kuchiyos, Edo Tensei, summoning, and pure world reincarnation. That jutsu made him think back to when he murdered his family in cold blood. Did he regret not telling them about their neglect and watch them suffer as they died that night? Not really. They can wonder in the afterlife for all he cares. Maybe if he ever talks to them somehow he might tell them why, and maybe he could rub it in their faces. He could use the Edo Tensei to summon them back to the living and that away their will. But in order to do that he needed the bodies or remains. Something he doesn't have, as all the bodies were destroyed in the explosion. Snapping out of his thoughts, he looked over to Mebuki, who walked into the room and offered him a slice of cake. Naruto took the slice with a small smile. He had some time before the party at the Uchiha compound, so he could spend time with Mebuki. Naruto made it a point to visit each of them almost every day, and they were happy to see him. Hanabi was glad that her big brother came back to play as well. He stayed with Mebuki for quite some time, and soon it was time for him to leave. He stood up as Mebuki watched him get up next to her. "I had fun, Mebuki-chan," Naruto said, turning to face her. "I would like to do this again sometime." Mebuki smiled at the blonde. "I would like that," she said as Naruto left, closing the door behind him. After closing the door, Naruto started to walk towards the compound while thinking of the team meeting tomorrow. Tomorrow would be the day they will meet their Jonin sensei, the teacher that would guide them to become better shinobi. Naruto was placed in a team with his friend, rival, brother Sasuke and Shino. He was surprised he wasn't placed on a 4-man team with Kiba, but apparently they were on a 3-man team. Kiba was put on a team with a kid called Sai, who was a former member of Root, and with a girl named Shiho. There were others, but Naruto didn't pay much attention, to be honest. Maybe during the Chunin exams he would learn about them if they make it that far. I wonder if our sensei Asuma or Kurenai, Naruto thought as he turned a corner, smiling at a few civilians who smiled back. Asuma and Kurenai were Jonin-level ninjas and were the 2 Jonin that Naruto knew would take a team. Yugao was a member of Anbu, so unless she went back to Jonin then she wouldn't be taking a team. Hayate, Ibiki and Anko were Tokubetsu Jonin and had their own agendas. Makoto and a few others were retired, and so on. Naruto got to the compound and they celebrated on passing the first exam. It was just the 3 of them for this party. Naruto, Sasuke and Shino, as they were put on the same team, Team 8. They decided to tell them their teams the same day and they will meet their sensei tomorrow. A lot has changed in the academy after the attack, yet still the same in a way. As Sasuke and Shino talked, as Naruto listened in, as his eyes caught glimpse of Makoto walking down a hall, Naruto smiled as he waved when she saw him, causing her to wave back. Makoto continued walking down the hall with Naruto's eyes glued onto her ass before she turned and disappeared from view. Luckily Sasuke and Shino didn't notice. That would be awkward, and he already explained himself when it came to looking. So how are we going to get past the second exam? Sasuke asked as the last Uzumaki and the Aburame took on thoughtful expressions. Well, it depends on who our sensei is, Naruto said. I agree it could be different each time, Shino added. But I bet it has something to do with teamwork, Naruto said again. Then again, there are always teams of 3, the Uchiha said. How about we advise a combat plan? Shino asked the two, who looked at each other and nodded. They spent some time there planning before Naruto and Shino walked home. Shino was the next person to leave as they by the compound. See ya, Shino, Naruto said as Shino nodded. Stay safe, Naruto-san, Shino said emotionlessly before walking into the compound. Naruto eventually entered the Senju compound with a smile as Shizune welcomed him. On Naruto-kun, you passed, she said with a happy tone, noticing his headband. Tsunade, who was sitting at a table, smiled as she poured sake. I guess this calls for a celebration, she said as she used an excuse to drink sake, causing the two to sweat drop. Where were you, Naruto-kun? Shizune asked. I was out with friends, he simply replied as Shizune smiled. They turned to see Tsunade pour a small amount of sake from a large bottle into a tiny glass before picking up the bottle and drinking it. Doesn't that defeat the purpose of have a glass? Both Naruto and Shizune thought. Tsunade then pushed the glass towards Naruto. Have a drink, she said. Naruto glanced at Shizune, who looked conflicted. She didn't want Naruto drinking sake despite doing so in the past, except she didn't know that. It's fine, Shizune, Tsunade said, still sober. She knew how to hold her liquor. With his genes he has a harder time to get drunk. It was true, his Uzumaki genes practically gave him a strong immune system, alcohol tolerance, large chakra reserves, a strong life force, and special chakra to use the Kongo Fusa, and the ability to heal through biting. His clan was overpowered. He could still get drunk, but it was much harder for him to do. Tsunade, on the other hand, also had tolerance to alcohol, but when she did get drunk she just used a jutsu that makes her sober. Shizune gave Tsunade a look as Naruto drank the glass of sake. He already drunk it before, but now he could legally drink it. Your first taste of sake, Tsunade said with a smile. How did it taste? It tasted, I can't really describe it, he said. But it was actually better than I thought it would be. It wasn't a lie, as it was his first legal sake as a ninja. I still can't believe you, Tsunade-sama, Shizune said before going on to scold her about making Naruto drink sake. Naruto sat down as Tsunade filled it back up again. Tsunade-sama, Shizune sputtered. Surely you're not thinking about making him drink more. Shizune, you worry too much, Tsunade said as Naruto drank the sake. Is this a test for tomorrow? Naruto thought as Tsunade poured one last cup before keeping the rest of the bottle for herself. Naruto drank the last glass. What was that for? Naruto questioned. Tsunade said nothing but smiled for a moment. I wanted to see if my godson could be a reliable drinking partner. Both Shizune and Naruto did not expect this. Tsunade then held up the bottle. This sake is one of the rarest and most powerful sake to date, holding the large sake bottle for them to see. Naruto, as you drank the other 2 glasses, did you enjoy it more and more? Actually I did, Naruto said. The first time was a bit weird as it was my first sake and it tasted good, but the other 2 were way better than the last. Well, of course you should like it, as it is from the slug summons, Tsunade said with a smirk as Naruto's and Shizune's eyes widened. Wait, so this is slug sake? Naruto asked. Not quite, Tsunade said. While it is from the slug summons, it is also from the Uzumaki clan. This caused the two to widen their eyes even more. It's a part of our clan. Tsunade nodded. However, it was actually created by my grandmother Mito, she said. Mito Bossen had signed the slug summoning contract and eventually made this sake. Tsunade then laughed. Only a few people are able to survive the first sip. Most people would get overwhelmed by it. Then how did I stand afterwards? Naruto asked. Tsunade shrugged. Maybe because of your Uzumaki genes, or you're just really good at holding your liquor. Tsunade walked over to Naruto. If you want, when you sign the slug contract, you can learn how to make this with Katsuyu. Naruto glanced at the sake. It wasn't clan sake, but in fact created by a clan member, given to Tsunade and given to him. It was apparently really strong, but he and Tsunade seemed to withstand the effects of the sake. It probably was his genes. He never gotten drunk before, but he always stopped after a while. Maybe he had built up some alcohol tolerance due to the sake he drank in the past. Well, whatever the reason, he didn't care much. He then thought of the summons. He probably be signing the contract after the true test. He truly wanted to sign the contract with the slugs, and he met Katsuyu once, and she was probably one of the nicest boss summons he would meet. He had seen Gamabunta talk with Jiraiya a few times, and the only one the Toad had any respect for was Minato. Not even Naruto gotten any respect from the Toad. He was a little worried about the Toads. After the death of his family, the Toads could go to him and ask him to sign the contract with them if they thought he was the child of prophecy, which he isn't and never will be. He didn't want to sign their contract due to some old Toad or because his family signed it. He was signing the slug contract, and that was final. So Katsuyu and your grandmother made this sake? Yep. However, I'm not good at making it with her like Mito Bossen, Tsunade said. It however also has a good healing property if you're injured, but if you do have an injury, it will make you drunk much faster. That's some powerful sake, Shizune said. Healing sake? Naruto wondered how that was possible. Then again, Katsuyu could heal many people and was probably the one of the best healers in the world. Sake created with healing properties and could get people drunk easily compared to other sake. This was something he wanted to learn how to make, and judging by Tsunade's words, she did make the sake and seemed to only make it for special occasions. Did you make this one, Tsunade-sama? Shizune asked the Godime Hokage. I did, she replied. I don't make it often, and the ones that I do hold nothing compared to Ba-san's sake. How long was the last time you made this? A long time ago, Tsunade said. Even though it isn't like Mito's, it can still get people drunk pretty easily. That explained it. The sake wasn't at its full potential, but it still was pretty powerful. It took a lot of sake to get a Uzumaki drunk due to their genes, and it seemed Naruto was pretty sure he would get wasted if he drank Mito's sake. Have you learned any more from your clan scrolls? Tsunade asked. I know we haven't talked as much since I became Hokage, and I'm sorry for that. Naruto shook his head. It's fine, and I have managed to use the adamantine sealing chains, but I can only make a small one from my palm. At least you're making progress, Shizune said with a smile. Are you looking forward to tomorrow? I am, he replied. I hope our sensei is prepared for us. Tsunade smirked at his words. So he knows, huh? She thought before the smirk became a smile. I do hope you pass it, Naruto-chan. Well, you better get some rest, Tsunade said. You don't want to be late. Naruto nodded and walked to bed. Tsunade pulled out a scroll when Naruto left. Tsunade-sama, what's with the scroll? Shizune asked the Sannin. This scroll contains something Naruto asked me earlier, she said before turning her gaze to Shizune. I told him we will do it together, but I went ahead and did it without him knowing, and I'm hoping to surprise him after he passes. I'll bet he will be happy with that then, Shizune said. The slug princess nodded. By the way, where is Taunton? She said as she noticed the little pig wasn't with her. Shizune smiled. She is sleeping on Naruto's bed. Naruto entered his room and saw a little pink pig sleeping on his bed. This was Taunton. Tsunade's ninja pig and also Shizune's, as Shizune seemed to take care of the piglet more. Taunton was wearing a dark red jacket and a pearl collar. Naruto smiled at the sleeping pig. "Hey Taunton," he said after he got dressed. The little pink pig slowly stirred and opened her eyes and spotted Naruto before squealing and jumping into his arms. "Hey Taunton," he said, patting the pig. "How have you been?" The pig oinked as he sat her down. Naruto and Taunton had a bond similar to that of the Inuzuka and their dogs. Taunton liked Naruto as she liked Shizune and Tsunade. Taunton was usually in Shizune's care most of the time, and when she wasn't, she was with Tsunade or Naruto. Words couldn't describe the bond between the three and the pig, but with Tsunade, Shizune, Naruto and Taunton, they made up a little family, a part of Naruto's bigger family he had now. Since Taunton was a ninja pig or ninten, she was able to go on missions as a tracker. "I'm going to go to bed Taunton, do you want to stay here?" he asked as she oinked before sitting in a little bed similar to one's dogs had. "Good night Taunton," Taunton oinked as Naruto went to sleep for the next day. The next day Naruto got dressed and headed downstairs with Taunton as she moved faster than the blonde. Naruto smiled at the energetic pig as they entered the kitchen. Naruto got Taunton her food first before making his own. He had no idea if Shizune and Tsunade were gone or not, so he decided to ask Taunton. "Hey Taunton, is Tsunade and Shizune still here?" he asked. Taunton looked at him and started to sniff the ground. "Oink oink," she said as she pointed to the stairs. "Ah," he said and looked at the clock. "I guess I was excited for today, I woke up even earlier than normal." "Oink," Taunton said as Naruto picked her up holding her like Shizune did. "What's that? They're waking up now. Oink, oink, I better start on theirs now, don't I? Oink, oink." Naruto laughed as he placed the pig down and started making their breakfast. Naruto and Taunton turned their heads to the stairs as they heard footsteps coming down it. Something smells good," Tsunade said, rubbing the sleep out of her eyes before yawning with Shizune right behind her. "Oh Naruto-kun, you're up," Shizune said, looking at Naruto sitting down holding Taunton in his arms. "Oink oink. Good morning," Naruto said. "You're up early," Tsunade said. "Didn't you tell me to get some rest?" Naruto asked. "So I got some rest." Tsunade laughed before sitting down at the table. "I guess I did." Her eyes spotted the food. "You made this?" Naruto nodded. "I did." Shizune sat down and at the table as well, and both Tsunade and Shizune ate their own meals as Naruto patted Taunton. Naruto got up after handing Taunton to Shizune. "See you later," Taunton squealed as Shizune waved to him. "Come home early after you meet your sensei Naruto," Tsunade said. "Okay," Naruto said as he left the room wearing the same outfit he had on at the party. It may not be considered as ninja clothing, but it didn't matter to him. Genin usually wore anything, and when they became Chunin their outfits usually went to the flak jacket with black or dark blue clothing. Naruto was walking to the academy where they would meet their sensei, and he was thinking who it would be. Whoever their sensei was, they would be called Team whatever their name was, like the past Team 7 being called Team Minato. He personally hoped his sensei was someone who was a part of his family. Walking into the room, he sat down at a desk and waited for a few others. Soon the room was packed and Suzume spoke to the class. "When I call your teams out, go to the location I tell you." Team 8 waited until they were called up and they had to go to Training Ground 8. Naruto, Sasuke and Shino headed over to the training ground. "So our sensei is here?" Sasuke asked. "He or she should be here," Shino said as Naruto looked around. "Shino, Sasuke," Naruto whispered to the two. "Do you remember our plan?" "Of course," Sasuke whispered back. "It seems we have to search for our sensei," Naruto said. "I'll send out a few bugs to search," Shino said as a small amount of bugs flew out of his sleeve and went around the training ground. Sasuke's eyes morphed into the Sharingan. "Let's go look for our sensei," Sasuke said as the two nodded. "My Kikaichu have found some chakra," Shino said as the three went into the general direction. "Whereabout is it?" Sasuke asked. "In the trees," Shino replied as Sasuke looked up in the trees. Our sensei is hiding in a weak genjutsu, Sasuke said. Our sensei is on the run. Shino then used his bugs to block off the path ahead as Naruto held out his palm. Kongo Fusa adamantine sealing chains, Naruto said as a chain shot out from his palm. Quickly Naruto to the left, Sasuke told his friend and Naruto caused the chain to go to the left. Team's Eiza sensei turned to see the chain heading closer before seeing Sasuke's eyes. Genjutsu. Sharingan illusion technique. Copy wheel eye, Sasuke said as the team's sensei was caught in an illusion before easily breaking out of it, but when their sensei broke out of it the chain was already wrapped around him or her with Shino's Kikaichu surrounding both the sensei and the chain just in case. I knew you three would pass that easy test, their sensei said as they gotten a better look at their sensei. Kurenai-chan, Yuhi-san, Naruto and Sasuke said. Kurenai smiled and Naruto noticed her outfit. Gone were the red pants, sleeveless red shirt with the Konoha flak jacket on it, and she was now wearing a red mesh armor blouse with only the right sleeve visible and something that resembles bandages with rose thorn patterns on it. You three have shown teamwork in locating me and capturing me, she said. So this was another test? Shino asked. Yes, that test was to check if you three could work together, Kurenai said. You three have passed the test I have set up for you. Congratulations, you three are now official ninjas. The three smiled and Naruto smiled seeing as a member of his family was his sensei. Now that we are official a team we will be beginning missions tomorrow. Today we will practice teamwork exercises and formations, Kurenai told the genin. Naruto held a groan at the missions they would be doing. They would start with D-rank missions were usually odd jobs and chores like babysitting and fence painting, however the reward for D-rank missions were between 5,000 Ryo and 50,000 Ryo. C-rank mission rewards were between 30,000 Ryo and 100,000 Ryo, B-rank missions were between 150,000 and 200,000 Ryo, A-rank missions were between 50,000 Ryo and a million Ryo, and finally S-rank missions were more than a million Ryo. Life as a ninja was well set with payment like that, but D-ranking missions were usually given by civilians at the lowest price possible unless they were rich or generous. Team 8 or Team Kurenai trained in becoming a tracking and capturing team, which the Sasuke's Sharingan, Shino's insects and Naruto's seals, clones and chains. Naruto wondered if he could bring Tonton with her tracking skills. Kurenai said he could bring Tonton if it was alright with Tsunade and Shizune, and of course depending on the mission. Tonton was also pretty strong as he has seen her carrying large boxes full of medical equipment. Naruto was currently working on producing 2 chains but so far could only make 1. Afterwards he worked on his Fuinjutsu. The Uzumaki Fuinjutsu just came naturally to him. Besides from the Uzumaki just Yu and seals he started on his father's jutsus, they techniques were useful and shouldn't go to waste. He wasn't not going to use them because he hated his father of the fact his father copied another technique to create it. He would change them to set his own style, and he had gotten a few ideas for jutsu that he wanted to make as well. He brought the jutsu scroll his father made for Naruto with him that held his father's techniques, which wasn't a lot. Jiraiya didn't add any techniques to the scroll, and Kushina's jutsu were all the clan jutsus and were still in the Senju compound. The only techniques written down by Minato were the Haraishin and its many variations, the Rasengan and the workings and teachings of both techniques. The other techniques Minato learned was from Jiraiya or from the Shinobi library, which contained jutsu for a ninja, and some were off limits depending on your rank. E rank were available for academy students and usually taught in the academy. D rank were available for genin. C rank jutsu were usually for chunin level. B rank were both chunin and jonin level. A rank was for both jonin and kage level, with S rank being for highly experienced jonin and kage level shinobi. Taking the small scroll of a few techniques, he pocketed it and went to see how Sasuke and Shino were doing. Naruto was trained first as he was already trained by Kurenai before he became a ninja. After evaluating his skill with Genjutsu, she went on to Shino and Sasuke. He could work on his other skills but he decided against it. When training his taijutsu and kenjutsu, he learned the basics of handling a sword and using of one and throwing proper punches and kicks, as well as learning useful techniques. Despite being skilled in multiple areas and having a wide selection of jutsu to choose from, Naruto knew he wasn't the strongest. There were many people in the village much stronger than him. Naruto thought she was the strongest for being a Jinchuriki, the daughter of the Hokage, and being trained by the strongest ninja in the village. Naruto did a quick check of his skill set. His ninjutsu was good along with his funijutsu. His taijutsu was also good but needed more improvement. He needed to practice his kenjutsu more along with his genjutsu and Iryo ninjutsu. His Iryo ninjutsu would be worked on once he signed the slug contract. He could track but not as good as a member of the Inuzuka clan or Taunton, and he couldn't really practice interrogating someone, and his poisons were currently limited to lethal and paralytic. Even though Shizune only taught him paralytic, she would probably freak out if she knew he studied lethal poisons before graduating. Naruto checked his poison, Senbon, shuriken and kunai from his pouch. He needed to go shopping for poison and some medical herbs soon. Naruto watched as Sasuke trained with Kurenai before she moved on to train with Shino before they were issued a break. Naruto walked over to Sasuke. "Here, I got you something." Sasuke looked to see Naruto hand him some bracelets with kanji on them. "What is this?" he asked his rival friend. "Put them on first," Naruto said as Sasuke put them on. "Now put both hands over them and place chakra in them, or just touch them with chakra." Sasuke, doing as told, placed his hands over the seals on the bracelets, and suddenly shuriken came out. Sasuke looked at Naruto, who had a proud look on his face. "I called it the Kuchiyos. Reiko Kenka, summoning. Lightning flash blade creation," Naruto said. Sasuke had a deadpanned look. "But it's just a storage seal. It's a special ninja tool summon," Naruto told his friend. "It allows you to seal ninja tools like swords, kunai, shuriken and whatever into the seal, and when you summon them, the time between taking the ninja tool out and getting into the right stance is greatly reduced." Sasuke resealed the two shuriken before touching both of them and getting the same two shuriken and quickly getting into the stance. "You're right, the time is greatly reduced," Sasuke said. "Of course I'm right, and besides it suits your style," Naruto said. "I'm planning on making on for Shino, but I need to figure out his style first. He doesn't require ninja tools if he uses his insects." Sasuke smiled. "Thanks for these, Naruto." Naruto smiled back. "No problem, brother." When he said this, Sasuke remembered them drinking and exchanging sake. Kurenai, who was watching this, smiled at how Naruto given Sasuke something that would help Sasuke's fighting style, and the fact he was going to give Shino something that will help him as well. However, that name seems a little like Minato when he is naming jutsu, Kurenai thought as she sweat dropped at the name of the so-called seal technique. Naruto wondered about Shino's fighting style and wondered what he should give him. Naruto could give Shino the same sealing bracelets he gave Sasuke, as Shino used his bugs in his fighting style. "I have to use something with his Kikaichu, but what can go with it?" Naruto thought. Naruto lied on the soft grass as he watched the clouds roll by in the sky. Fuinjutsu and insects didn't go well. He could place some seals on the bugs or seal some Kikaichu into a storage seal, but that wasn't a good idea. Naruto's eyes widened as he got an idea for a fuinjutsu, since he couldn't write seals on the Kikaichu as they die easily, but he could give Shino a seal to use. He had to work on the seal he planned to give Shino, and he would have to advert his time to making the seal instead of training, but it would be worth it as Shino was a part of his family. As he pulled out his pouch, he reached in and pulled out a small notepad. The notepad contained the jutsu Naruto himself created and his own seals. Naruto started writing down the seal for Shino, and he looked up to see Sasuke sparring against Kurenai with his new bracelets. After they fought, the two both went to pick up the kunai and shuriken that was thrown, and Naruto did check out Kurenai a couple of times before looking towards Shino, who was simply looking at some bugs on a tree. Looking at Shino just gave more ideas for the blonde who wrote them down. Kurenai then told Team 8 to go back home and get ready for missions for tomorrow. Naruto held a groan as he thought of doing missions. Despite the decent pay for D-rank missions, he didn't like how it was basically chores. He did have a sliver of hope when he thought of the dreaded Tora mission. A mission where Genin had to catch Madame Shijimi's cat called Tora, or to the Genin the demon cat. However, the bright side of it was the pay, as Shijimi would pay a lot of money for the return of her cat. Naruto walked to the Yamanaka flower shop planning on getting some herbs and poisonous flowers. Entering the flower shop, he spotted Amiko. Amiko spotted him and waved. "How may I help you today, Naruto-kun?" she said as Naruto looked at some flowers. "I'm looking for some herbs that can be used for medic and some poisonous plants," Naruto said as Amiko nodded. Amiko went through some of the flowers while talking to Naruto. "It's not very often when someone comes looking for those," she said as she picked up some herbs. "I also have to ask what type of poisonous plants you are looking for." "I'm looking for both lethal and paralytic," Naruto said. "Also some that can cause other side effects." Amiko nodded with a smile as she placed some of the herbs on the desk to one side before putting on some gloves. It was better to be safe than sorry when dealing with poisonous plants. Amiko put on some more protective gear before picking some poisonous flowers and plants. She placed the poisonous plants on top of a scroll and sealed them. "You can use chakra?" Naruto asked as Amiko nodded. "I once went into the academy long ago as my parents were actually ninja, but I didn't want to become a ninja," Amiko told the boy. "My parents were understanding and I was able to pursue another career." "Your parents were ninjas? I'm sorry, but you look too noble to enter the academy." Amiko giggled. "I know I'm still a civilian, but my chakra was unlocked." She then turned her gaze to the poisonous flowers. "It helps when dealing with these plants with sealing them. Do you know any jutsu then?" Naruto asked. Amiko shook her head. "No, I don't know any techniques besides from sealing and unsealing storage scrolls, and my chakra pool isn't that large due to not becoming a ninja." Naruto inwardly smiled. This would help when he would help Amiko learn the Yamanaka clan jutsu if she wanted to learn them. He feared that due to being a civilian for so many years, unlocking her chakra would prove disastrous to her body, but learning she only had it unlocked eased his worries. "So what are these plants?" Naruto politely asked as Amiko started to tell Naruto about the plants. "This one is called Aconitum genus, or commonly called aconite, wolfsbane and monkshood. It contains a poison called aconitine, also known as devil's helmet. It can disable nerves, lowers blood pressure and can stop the heart. The symptoms are numbness, tingling and cardiac irregularity, and you should avoid skin contact," Amiko told the blonde. "Now this one is Asculus hippocastanum, or horse chestnut. It can cause nausea, muscle twitches and sometimes paralysis. This one also causes paralysis and is called Solanum dulcamara, or commonly known as bittersweet nightshade, and can cause fatigue, paralysis, convulsions and diarrhea." "And these ones?" Naruto asked, pointing to the other plants Amiko picked off the walls from a different room. "This is Daphne genus that can causes burns to mouth and digestive traits followed by coma. The Excocaria agaloca, or the river poison tree, can cause skin irritation and blistering as well as temporary blindness with eye contact," Amiko told Naruto. "Some have more effects than others, but all in all they should help you as a ninja." "Thank you, Amiko-chan," Naruto said. "But how can I extract the ones that I want from the others?" "Sadly I don't know, but you live with Hokage-sama, right?" she asked as Naruto nodded. "Maybe she can help you with that." Naruto's eyes widened. "I never thought of that. Thanks, Amiko-chan." Naruto smiled as he hugged the woman, causing her to blush slightly. Naruto paid for the herbs and plants and headed off to the Senju compound. "I'm home," Naruto said as he entered the house. Naruto heard a squeal as Taunton ran to him. "Welcome home, Naruto," Shizune said. "Oh Shizune, can you help me with something later?" he asked. "I'll be glad to help you. I have the rest of the day," Shizune said with a smile as Naruto patted Taunton. "What is it you want help with?" "Just some poisons," he said. "I have some plants that can cause some reactions, but I want to take them out and use them separately from the plant." Shizune was about to reply as Tsunade walked in carrying 2 scrolls. Congratulations on passing your true genin test, Tsunade said as Naruto smiled. Tsunade handed him one of the scrolls. What is this? Naruto asked as Tsunade smiled, holding the larger scroll under her arm. Remember what we talked about with the mask storage temple? Tsunade asked as Naruto nodded with his eyes widening, knowing what Tsunade could have done. Well, I went ahead and sealed the whole temple and all its contents into that scroll. The whole temple is in this scroll? He asked as Tsunade just smiled. And of course there is this, she said as she unrolled the large scroll to reveal 2 names, Tsunade and Mito. Is this? Yes, it is the slug summoning contract, Tsunade said. I can sign this. Me and Katsuyu-sama have decided that you can sign the contract, the Hokage told him. Katsuyu-sama is also happy to have you as a summoner. How do I sign a contract? He asked. Just sign your name in blood by biting your finger and writing your name down here, the slug princess said while pointing to the names. Naruto bit his thumb and wrote his name down on the contract as well as putting his fingerprints in blood on the scroll. Is that it? Naruto asked. That is that, Tsunade said. We will go to a training ground and you will summon Katsuyu-sama there. Naruto nodded as they headed off to a random training ground. Okay Naruto, here are the hand seals for the summoning jutsu, Tsunade said, showing him the seals slowly. Boar dog bird monkey ram, Naruto said as he finished the hand seals. Kuchio's no jutsu, summoning technique. A large puff of smoke covered the area, and when the smoke disappeared and a large slug appeared. The slug was white with 3 blue streaks running down on the middle and the sides. The body with 2 optical tentacles have a slight tint of gray and 2 sensory tentacles on either sides of its mouth. Tsunade-chan, Naruto-chan, I see you have summoned me, Katsuyu said as Naruto nodded. I'm glad you managed to summon me, Naruto-chan. I'm glad I was able to summon you, Katsuyu-sama, Naruto said. I hope you summon me again. Katsuyu then disappeared in smoke, returning back to the summon realm. Naruto turned to Tsunade, who had a proud smile. I'm proud of you, she said. You will learn more about the slug summon techniques, but we will start when you're a little older. Can you tell me about them? Katsuyu lives in Shikatsu Forest, and what you summoned wasn't just one slug but in fact a portion of the same entity. So there is only one summon? The Uzumaki asked the Senju. All the slugs come from Katsuyu, Tsunade said. So yes, we are summoning one entity. She lives in the forest by herself. Naruto thought. I'll summon her and talk to her. I bet she'll like to talk with someone. They re-entered the compound and Shizune was helping him with the poison and antidotes from the herbs and plants. Tsunade also helped when she was there before going off to relax. Naruto was able to create poisons from the poisonous plants and made some antidotes to the poisons as well as military ration pills. Naruto had poison that caused death, paralysis, burns, blindness, numbness, disabling nerves, nausea, vomiting, fatigue, convulsions, etc. It took a long time, but with the help of Shizune and the help of Suand he managed to create the poisons and antidotes. He sealed the poisons and antidotes into a storage tag that were labeled poison and antidote. The poisons and antidotes themselves were also labeled. Naruto packed the military ration pills into his pouch along with his Senbon, shuriken and kunai. He then went upstairs after dinner that Shizune cooked and started working on a seal for Shino. He did pull out 2 black bracelets similar to the ones he gave Sasuke. Just because he gave 2 to Sasuke didn't mean he wasn't going to not use it for himself. It would be a waste if he didn't use his own creations. He placed the bracelets into the pouch and got the notepad next to the Minato's jutsu scroll. Looking through the notes he started work on the seal. Eventually Naruto took a break from the seal and placed it in his drawer as he went to go have a shower and afterwards fell asleep in bed for the dreaded D-rank missions. Naruto, Sasuke, Shino and their sensei Kurenai were currently doing a few D-rank missions. The first was fence painting followed by babysitting for a few hours. The jobs went on and on as they did boring missions as Kurenai read a book or did some other things until they finished. Now they were doing one of the most dangerous missions a genin could take, the Tora mission. Currently the three were searching for the cat with a red ribbon. Naruto however brought Taunton with them as they searched for the cat. With Naruto's tracking ability he learned from Sum and Hana, with Taunton's tracking skill they easily found the cat. Shino then used his insects to capture the cat, or at least slow it down to a point where Sasuke could capture it in a genjutsu. Now they were taking the dread cat back to her owner, one Shijimi, or better known as the daimyo's wife. You are the first team to capture Tora this quickly, Kurenai said, looking at her genin with pride. Now let's hand the mission in. Entering the room, Madame Shijimi spotted them. "Oh Tora-chan," she yelled as Naruto handed her Tora and she squeezed the cat in her arms. "Thank you for saving my Tora." Nato smiled. "It's the least I could do, Shijimi-sama," Naruto said, bowing. "What a polite young man," Shijimi said, stopping the squeezing for now. "May I ask what breed Tora is?" "Oh, are you interested in Tora?" Shijimi asked as Naruto nodded. Shijimi then told Naruto all about Tora and her breed before she had to leave. "It was nice to talk to another cat lover," Shijimi said as Naruto nodded, and after she left Taunton started hitting Naruto's leg with her hooves. "Don't worry Taunton," Naruto said, picking up the pig. "I like you more than cats." This caused the pig to squeal in happiness. "Then why did you ask about Tora?" Tsunade said with her hands in front of her. "I did it so she could send more missions to Konoha," Naruto said. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. "Explain," she said. "How does talking about a cat bring Konoha more missions? You saw how happy she was when we were talking about Tora, correct?" Naruto asked as people in the room nodded, including the Anbu. If Shijimi had someone who liked cats or Tora as much as she did, then she would want to come to Konoha and talk about her precious Tora. It will then develop into a friendship between Madame Shijimi and whoever liked Tora or cats as much as her, in this case as me, Naruto explained. "Eventually. So you're saying we should get all the genin to like the cat while she is here?" Shizune asked as Naruto shook his head. "No, only one," Naruto said. "If more people started showing interest in cats, or more importantly Tora, she would suspect something. If she became friends with another cat lover, which she thinks I am, then she would want to spend time with the other cat lover, which will lead to more escort missions, higher pay for the Tora missions, and so on. So we are creating a friendship between you and the daimyo's wife to get Konoha more missions, pay for requests such as capture Tora and escorting the daimyo and his wife." Tsunade asked, looking at Naruto, who nodded. Suddenly Tsunade smiled. "That's pretty clever," she said as a purple-haired Anbu and the black-haired Anbu both nodded despite not being seen by the genin. "And since your team caught Tora the fastest, then that means you will have priority for the Tora mission to strengthen bonds with Madame Shijimi," she said as Naruto nodded. They were using the daimyo's wife, but it was out of necessity. The leaf, despite having a moment's weakness, needed to get back to where it was, and even if it meant using Madame Shijimi, then they would have to. Everyone in the room could tell by both of their tones that they didn't want to use the daimyo's wife, but they had to. The teams finished their missions for the day and went back to their respective homes, where they would rest before doing another set of D-rank missions or team training. At least the pay is decent. After enough D-rank missions, that would eventually go on C-rank missions and go through their first kill, except for Naruto. Nothing would go on their first C-rank, right? Team Kurenai did more D-rank missions that include many boring chores. Madame Shijimi did in fact come back to Konoha when Tora ran away, and Team Kurenai was tasked to capture the cat. After Tora's capture, Naruto would return the cat, which Shijimi would hug the demon cat, but instead of fighting back, Tora surprisingly didn't. When Shijimi talked to Naruto about her precious Tora, she didn't squeeze the life out of her. This went on for weeks. Tora actually liked being held, like her brain wasn't going to explode. However, Tora seemed to run to Konoha, as it seemed Tora still got squeezed to death back home, and it looked like only in Konoha was she held like this. Shijimi also started sending a few missions to Konoha, as well as giving Naruto a little more pay. It was safe to say Naruto's plan was working, and it seemed Shijimi started to see Naruto as a friend, if telling by the happy tone in her voice or the fact she started to talk about things that didn't relate to Tora. Right now Naruto just came from a conversation with Shijimi as she went back home. Kurenai walked up to Naruto and smiled at him. "Naruto-kun, I got something to tell you." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "What is it, Kurenai-chan?" he asked. "Due to all the D-rank missions, we are going on our first C-rank mission tomorrow," she said. "We can go on a C-rank mission?" Naruto asked as Kurenai nodded. "Be prepared for tomorrow," Kurenai said before walking away. Naruto decided instead of going straight home he went to the Akamichi barbecue restaurant. "Hey Cho-chan," Naruto said as he sat down. "Naruto-kun, welcome," she said as Naruto looked around. "Not much people in today," Naruto said as Cho nodded. "You want some barbecue?" Cho asked as Naruto shook his head. "Not today," he said. "I got something to tell you, can we go into the back?" "What is it?" she asked as they went into the back. "I'm going to go on my first sea mission tomorrow," Naruto told the widow, whose eyes widened. "Are you sure you're prepared for this?" she asked, worried for the blonde. "I mean, even though you won't fight ninja, there is a chance of death." "I know, Cho-chan," he said. "But in order to protect those close to me, I need to go on missions that risk death." "Please don't die," she said in a whisper. She then suddenly felt lips on her cheek and then saw Naruto smile at her. "Don't worry, Cho-chan," he said. "I will come back home to you. That's a promise." That line sent her heart aflutter. Ever since the death of both her husband and son, he was there to comfort her. Naruto was, and she knew that Naruto will get more attractive as he ages due to his parents. She knew one thing though. She was starting to have feelings for the Uzumaki. "See you, Cho-chan," Naruto said as he left a red-faced Cho. Naruto went to tell the others and they did show worry for him, but none showed as much worry as Cho did. Naruto pulled out a tag of paper as he went to his next destination, the Aburame compound. Naruto arrived at the Aburame compound as he walked up to the front door and knocked on it. He waited as the door opened to reveal a young girl that was somewhat shorter than him. She was wearing a trench coat that went down past her knees and close to her feet, and due to her short stature it was almost near the floor. The trench coat was a light gray and covered her neck. Looking at her face, she had a stoic expression on her face that showed no emotions whatsoever. She had short, smooth black hair and obsidian black eyes. If Naruto was to be honest, he would say she looked cute. "I didn't even know Shino had a sister," Naruto thought. "May I help you?" she asked with no emotion in her tone, but it did fit her appearance. "Sorry, I'm looking for your older brother Shino, is he here?" Naruto asked. "I'm not Shino's sister," she said. "I'm his mother." Naruto's eyes widened and he saw her lips twitch upwards. She was capable of emotions after all. I'm sorry," Naruto bowed as she still had that tiny smile. "I get it all the time," she said. "Are you a friend of my son?" Naruto nodded. "Yes, we are also teammates," Naruto told Shino's mother. "I'm glad my son has a friend. Are you by chance Naruto?" she asked as he nodded. Despite the emotionless tone she had, Naruto could tell she was really glad that her son had a friend. "My name is Reika," Reika said as she bowed. "It is nice to meet you, Naruto." "No, the pleasure is all mine," Naruto said as he bowed to hide the blush on his face. "Out of everyone, she is the one to make me blush," he thought. Whether it was from how cute she looked or embarrassment was yet to be seen, but it was probably the former. Reika's smile then went back to the normal stoic emotion she usually had. "So you want to see Shino?" she asked as Naruto nodded. Reika brought Naruto into the compound and Naruto had a look around to see many bug-relating photos, flowers, paintings, etc. It wasn't surprising to see bug things in the Aburame compound, but he was amazed at how both little and much insect-related things they had. "Shino," Reika said, getting Shino and his father Shibi's attention. "You have a friend who wants to see you." Shino looked over to Naruto, who gave a wave to Shino. "Hey Shino," Naruto said. Naruto-san, why are you here? Shino asked. Remember when I gave Sasuke those bracelets with the seals? He asked as Shino nodded. It took me a while but I finally did it. He then handed him a seal. What type of seal is this? Shino asked as Shibi raised an eyebrow. I call this the Hochu-ki, insect trap, Naruto said. It is a seal that releases a scent for bugs that causes them to home in on the smell. Uzumaki-san, Shibi said. This is a very complex seal. You must have had long sleepless nights. Naruto nodded. I've been spending a lot of time of making that seal work. Why go all this way for making Shino one? Shibi asked. Shino is my friend, he said. What's wrong with doing something for your friends? When he said this, Reika had a tiny smile before it disappeared. Naruto then continued on. It can lead people to finding bugs and it can help you track people who have been marked with the seal, he told them. The hardest part was making it so your insects are unaffected by the seal. I found that by pouring your chakra or blood on the seal would make it so your Kikaichu wouldn't be affected by the seal, he said. And how did you know this? Reika asked. I asked for help but only with putting chakra into the seal, Naruto told them. Do you want to test it? Sure, Shino said as the four went out to a close-by forest where bugs roamed free. Shino placed the seal down and poured his chakra into it before standing back in line next to his mother while Naruto stood on the other side of Reika. Due to Naruto and Shino standing next to Reika, it really showed how short and young-looking she was. Even Hanabi was taller than her and she was only 11 years old and still taller than Reika. Judging by Reika's attire, she was a member of the Aburame clan much like Cho was a member of the Akamichi clan. Clans like the Akamichi and the Aburame clans had trouble getting dates, and if they couldn't find someone outside of the clan they would be married within the clan. They watched as the seal attracted bugs of all shapes and sizes. Shibi and Reika kept their Kikaichu from going to the seal but a few managed to go towards the seal. That is amazing, Shibi said. With this seal we will be able to find new species. Shibi turned to Naruto. Uzumaki-san, will it be possible for you to make more seals for us? Shibi asked the blonde. I will pay you for the seals made. Thank you for the offer, Shibi-san, Naruto said. I will like to make seals for you but since of my genin duties I won't be able to make them all the time. I understand, the Aburame clan head said. I will take it you would use some of time off to make them. Yes, I will use spare free time to make the seals, Naruto said. And I have shadow clones to help as well. Shibi nodded before he and Shino went to check the seal and the bugs that were drawn to it. Naruto felt his shirt being tugged and looked to Reika who had a tiny smile on her face. It should be illegal to look that cute, Naruto thought, and that smile made her even cuter. Thank you Naruto-san, Reika said unaware of Naruto's thoughts. Thanks you for being my son's friend. It's nothing, he said. Well, I better get going now, he said as he left the compound waving goodbye. As he was walking down the street his thoughts were surprisingly, not really, on Reika. Sure, he blushed a couple of other times with other women and he did hang around with women that could be classified as hot and sexy like Kurenai and Anko. Since he spent time with someone who wore clothes to show off her body aka Anko, he became used to it and blushed less but still admired their forms regardless of what they looked like. Reika however was just too cute to him. Now he knew how Mebuki and the others felt when they blushed over him. Well, the ones he knew who liked him. Naruto walked down the once busy path and decided to get some ramen. Entering Ichiraku, he took a seat on a stool as Ayame asked him for what he wanted to have while Naruto noticed Tsuki wasn't there. Naruto-kun, Ayame said with a smile. Welcome back, what do you want today? A miso please, he said as she nodded and went to work on the ramen. Where's Tsuki? He asked as when Ayame walked away his eyes went to her ass. She did have a nice figure. He's sick today so I'm taking over for now until he gets better. I hope it isn't too busy for you. Ayame smiled at Naruto before looking back to the ramen. It's fine, she said. Dad won't be down to long and due to his sickness the closing times are cut shorter. But don't you need any help if it gets busy? Well, I would like the help, but I can't just let anyone learn the secret ingredient, you know. Ayame winked at Naruto, who just smiled. Naruto pulled some ryo out as he paid for his ramen when Ayame finished. Are you sure? He asked. Naruto-kun, Ayame said, knowing how worried he got over certain people of his family, and she was one of the ones he worried over. I'll be fine, besides you have your duties as a ninja, right? So you can't help out unless you have missions that don't go all day. Naruto sighed. But if you have enough time after the mission, then maybe you can help out. Naruto then smiled. I would love to help you after missions, Naruto said. But I am unsure how long tomorrow's mission is. Mission? Ayame asked as she raised an eyebrow. Don't you mean missions? Naruto shook his head. Tomorrow is my first C-rank mission, he told her as her eyes widened. And a high chance of my first kill. Ayame looked worried, but she didn't know the fact Naruto already had his first kill or kills. Are you sure you should be okay with taking missions like that? She asked, worry in her tone. Naruto finished his ramen and stared, helping Ayame close the ramen stand. Ayame-chan, I'll be fine, he said. It's not like I'll be fighting any ninja, he said. The only thing I will have to fight would be bandits, he said before looking Ayame in the eyes. I want to protect you, he said with determination as Ayame's face lit up. In order to protect you, I need to get stronger and take more dangerous missions, he said as he caressed her cheek. I'll promise I'll come back to you, Ayame-hime. Naruto took his hand away from Ayame's cheek and gave her a smile. Why you promise? She stuttered. I'll never go back on my word to you, Ayame-hime, he said. Naruto and Ayame's face got closer to each other, lips almost touching, and suddenly they kissed. It was a soft kiss until they both strengthened it as their tongues explored the other's mouth.